show for a few minutes. I wanted to give you backgrounders on what I'm up to. There's a person in the room that's actually attended the studio session, can attest to that. And maybe Kevin from VAC is going to show up, because guess what? I brought with me the lacquer, actual lacquer that Bernie made, that you're going to see in the video. And we're playing it in the VAC room. So you can hear the metal lacquer. How many times in your life do you get a chance to hear a high-end major recording on the metal lacquer? I brought Andres Kosh with me, who's from Playback Designs. He's in room 402. We're playing up in that room the album, and on his fantastic system. We're doing it on, you guys have to tell them all the stuff we're going to be doing now. But Andres has a huge history in the recording, dealing with recordings, and also the translation of them into the digital format. He believes in solid state versus tubes. Oh, let's start a war, right? I posted a Facebook page recently where I said, Bernie and I were in the room deciding. We were listening in his tone to noise, one versus the other. And I had to make a decision. Bernie's had his eye already. He was just testing me. He always tests me, so I'm learning. I'm like a student. And I picked what I picked. He said, good job, good girl. You picked what you could hear. Not what you were told to like. I'm going to start this out with a very controversial statement. I'm not an uncontroversial woman. I used to teach in college, so it's okay for me to be this way, right? But one of the things I'm going to tell you is that I recently got great reviews from Scott and Holland and John. John, are you here? Yeah. Stankavich. John has written a couple of things on me, and they were really well received. Part-time audio. One of the things that was posted, and one gentleman, a younger gentleman, I looked him up on Facebook and kind of made a review. Oh, thank you. Now, is that better? Maybe. So we did kind of a post, and then some guy came back and came with a comment, this gentleman, and he said, "Oh, you guys, and he has got audio equipment, and then he said, all you care about is 1, sound, 2, sound, 3, sound. That's how you measure talent." Okay, so I'm here to tell you, I spend all the money I do when I make my audiophile reference recordings with the intent of giving you great sound. But what is my main objective? My main objective is for you to listen to the music and what the musicians created for you. I have musicians that are just dying to share their talent with you. And this is the avenue for me. I'm just a kind of personality that everything I want to do, it has to be top drawer. I became a U.S. champion ballroom dancer because I wanted quality. And I went through academia. I went through a master's degree with a 3.9, right? My PhD program at Michigan State. I just am that kind of a personality. So when we came to this business, which I had absolutely no idea about, I've been the quickest study on the block. And I would wish to share with you what I have learned. I don't know everything. Trust me, I don't. But I'm going to share with you a video right now that will take you into the behind the scenes of the making of my new album called The Moonlight Sessions. I'm coming out with 2 volumes this year. I'm only putting out, at the moment, I have created a vinyl record that's going to be a 1-step, and you're going to see it. And I brought with me one of the lacquers that's literally featured in here. And as I was saying, Kevin from VAC, I have given him one of the sets, and he's playing them on his system to get a chance to listen to a real lacquer. It's awesome. I was taken aback by it. It's just awesome. And it's the metal lacquer. It's normally 14 inches, but at RTI they cut it for me so that I could play it for you. Okay, well, let me try it with the, I think I can, maybe. Did it go down? Okay. So I'm going to start with a video, and do I turn the off switch? Do I need to have this on, or can I have it on while you're playing? Does this have to go down? Okay. Well, let's give it a shot. Okay, here we go. We'll adjust the volume. the Village Studio.
Fleetwood
Mac recorded here and many other places.
And the song that I sing is of moonlight. I stand.
That was Al Schmidt.
And I wait for the touch of your hand in the June night. The roses are sighing.
That was Stevie Nicks' room. She created that.
Moonlight serenade. The stars are aglow, and tonight how their light sets me dreaming. My love, do you know
John Houdini, who worked with Peggy Lee for 25 years.
that your eyes are like stars brightly beaming? I bring you,
Tamir Handelman works with Barbra Streisand.
sing you a moonlight serenade.
The Yamaha that we used.
To break of day in love's
Al Schmidt at
valley
board.
of dreams. Just you
This is called the Control
and
Room.
I, a summer sky, a heavenly breeze, kissing the trees. So don't
Take their music
let
serious.
me wait. Come to me tenderly in the June.
That mic is a knockoff. I'll explain that in a bit. Christian Jacob wrote the music for the movie Sully.
And I sing you a song.
Bob McChesney on trombone. Chuck Finley on trumpet.
My darling,
Ricky Woodard on sax.
a moonlight serenade.
Mike Garson in the background. Now we go to the mastering studio, Bernie Grundman. Inside Bernie's office. The master. Quarter-inch tape. IPS.
So don't
2-track.
let me wait.
The Lacquer.
Come to me tenderly in the June night. I stand
The pressing plant, RTI.
at my gate,
Chief technician that makes the stampers.
and I sing you a song in the moon.
He has to preserve them first.
A love song, my darling, a moonlight serenade.
Creating the stamper from the father. From the lacquer, this is called the father, or the master. They spray it with a silver, and then they basically cook it in acid to create a shell around it. He puts it in that bath for a one-step, much of a shorter period of time than he does for a three-step. This is Chuck Finley on bass. Chuck Berghofer, excuse me. He was with the Wrecking Crew. Waiting. I'm isolated. Noted. They take a note of that.
Crazy crazy for feeling so lonely.
Ribbon mics.
I'm crazy.
Look at their location
Crazy for
around the guitar.
feeling so blue.
Al Schmidt set that up.
I knew you'd love me as long as you wanted.
That's Ray Brinker. Worked with a
And
Tierney Sutton
then
band.
someday you'd leave me for somebody new. Worry.
Control panel. Control what we hear.
Why do I let myself worry? Wondering what in the world did I do? Oh, crazy for thinking that my love could hold you.
Al's equipment.
I'm crazy for
Against
trying.
Stevie Nicks' room. The guys in it.
Crazy for crying. I'm crazy for loving you.
Al giving me trouble. Al is now 87 years old as of this month. Joe LaBarbera worked for Bill Evans years. He's actually the drummer on this song.
Worry. Why do I let myself worry? Wondering what in the world did I do?
I had strings put on volume 2. This is in Budapest, Hungary. It's called Studio 22. 30 string orchestra musicians.
For thinking that my love could hold you. I'm crazy for trying, crazy for crying, and crazy for loving you. I'm crazy for trying.
We streamed them in. I was
Crazy for
live with
crying
them.
and
It was morning for me and night for them.
crazy
We
for
talked to the conductor while he was
loving
making this happen. We changed things.
you.
The thing that's most critical in audio are the transducers. So that means anything that's converting one thing to another. This is a speaker is converting electrical energy to mechanical. Okay, that's a difficult thing to do. It's trying to translate what electrically is coming to the speaker into something that is actually moving and creating the movement in the air so that you hear it. And the speaker, being a mechanical device, is subject to all kinds of resonances and inconsistency in its frequency response, because metal and all these materials, all these mechanical materials, have various resonances and so forth. It's just like a bass. Certain notes are huge,
Right,
and
right.
other notes are small.
Right.
It's like that's resonances. And you have the same thing in speakers. Like I said, when yours comes on the radio, it's like
Yeah,
it's a difference.
Yeah.
It just fills the car. You know, I'm driving in my car. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, it comes in. When was One Step really popular? Wasn't it the 50s? And why? And what is so complicated about it?
Well, One Step isn't complicated. It's less complicated in a way.
It's complicated for the pressing plant, though.
Well, they just have to make the metal master, the first negative off of the lacquer, into a stamper. That's all.
When I had the mixing done, you asked that it be given to you in quarter-inch
Right.
format.
Yeah.
Why quarter-inch when in the past I always thought bigger was better and I had it done on half-inch because that was what we recommended, but you changed that on this one.
Well, and half-inch came in the late 70s is when it came in. Up to then, it was all quarter-inch. You know, all masters came in on quarter-inch. But then, you know, there was, for some reason, an interest in it because, you know, 3-track had been developed and 4-track on half-inch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have a lot of stock in half-inch, and they thought, well, what would it be like to have 2-track half-inch? I mean, half-inch tape, you know, 2-track, so wider
Right.
signal on the
Allowance,
tape,
right.
which would immediately would mean that it would be quieter. It's actually 3 dB quieter. When you actually take two identical machines that are set up perfectly, all the bias, the equalization, everything's set up, and if you don't look at the tape machines and you turn them both on, playing the same thing or recording the same thing, and you A/B them, you'll pick the quarter-inch every time.
You did this test with Alan.
I've done this test with Alan Sides.
Yeah,
I've done it in my own studio for myself just to prove it again.
yeah,
And every time I've tested that,
yeah,
the quarter-inch wins.
yeah. I took
And-
this album sounds great.
Yeah. Those recordings that the audiophiles call the golden age of audio in the late 50s, early 60s, all in that, those were all quarter-inch tapes that those were things were made from.
Is that the Dave Brubeck stuff, was it?
Yeah, that was so. Well, now the Dave Brubeck,
Tell me about that.
the multi-track was a half-inch though,
Okay,
but the mix down was to quarter-inch.
okay.
So first off, we're going to even see how much
Yeah.
difference we can hear when we actually do a test cut on these 3 different lacquers, and we'll choose the 2 best ones, or if we can't hear any difference, we'll just make a,
Potluck.
yeah, it'd be a random thing, but
They
just
do.
to be able to tell.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll do something like that, and then send them to the factory, and they'll do their process, and then we'll get tests, and
They're excited.
yeah, well, they
said
probably
to
don't
me-
even know.
They don't know. They
They
told
don't
me they
know.
don't know. They're excited.
Yeah, they probably don't know.
Yeah. So there we go. Okay. Thank you.
So all kinds of effort here to find the absolute best way to do this, so that the consumer can hopefully get closer and closer and closer to what we hear off the master. That's the object.
Yeah. Totally. Thank you, Brian.
All or nothing at all. Half a love never appealed to me. If your heart never could yield to me.
Well, did you like that? Interesting? Thank you. I wanted to show you what it's really like behind the scenes and what goes into the actual making of the records that I make. It's much different when you use a major studio. And everyone probably knows here, I pay for my own music. I don't have no one's offered. I'm willing. Oh, please, bring me money. I'm willing, but I've had to pay for everything myself. So when you see the studio session work that you saw, I try like heck as a producer to make everything happen as fast as I can. So we recorded 25 songs, 25 in 3 days. And I had turnover of musicians because we had different people coming in and going out. But 25 is a lot. And in terms of, even and Al said, "Oh my God, I don't know how you did it," you know. And now the point a lot of people ask in the audiophile world is, why do you record your vocals separately? Why were you in that booth? What is the most important thing? I wrote checks 1 week after this last recording for just the musicians. No different, just the musicians for $29,000. I can't get them to come back. Am I important? No. Are they important? Yes. And is it possible for me, the human Lyn, to record at stellar level 25 songs? That's what, 8 or so a day. And we had, at the most, probably 3 or 4 takes. but I had also gotten bronchitis, and I had a major cold. I couldn't possibly have done it. We have one song on the album that I'm releasing now. One of them is actually the scratch track. It's called Break It To Me Gently. And the reason I let it be the scratch track, and it has some little tuning issues because I wasn't feeling up to time, but it's okay, it's passable, is because John Cudini, after he wrote the song's arrangement, he said to me, don't do anything with it. Just leave it. He said, after I listened to it, I didn't want to leave you. As he was playing it, he said, the song's saying, Break It To Me Gently, let me down the easy way. He said, I didn't want to leave you. I'm going to stay with you. So it impacted him on doing it. One of the things that goes to the actual making and the enticement for doing albums like what I do is that the arranging has a big part of who I hire. They like inventive and provocative and exciting arrangements. And one of the things that I entice them with, all these are basically double scale musicians, but they'll still go and work for other people, but they like to work on my albums because I give them freedom to work. And we have an incredible studio. If you go to a smaller studio, like Al would say to me, where are we going to record? And I said, I gave him options. Originally, we were going to be doing it at United, where I did my Interludes album. But they got booked after I had to cancel that session because of my bronchitis and pneumonia. So we had to go into the Village. And Al knows that studio. But if I'd offered any other, he would have said to me, I want to know about the board. I asked him about one studio, and he said, no way. I won't do it there. No way. So he brings all of his original equipment that he's had in for years, and he has to trust the music or the engineering team that's inside of a studio. He said to me, I'm bringing my own guy from Capitol, Lyn, and you're paying for him, because I don't trust those guys at Village to touch my microphones and my everything. And I said, okay. So I had to work out a deal with Paula. But what goes into the arrangement part of this is I had to come up with some concepts this time on this album. And I came from within myself to see if I've really grown as an artist. Every time I do something for you in the audiophile world, I try to step up the game again and again. Like typically, what we did on the last album, it was mixed for you in the half-inch tape. But this time we went down to quarter-inch because Bernie told me to do that. And I wanted to. He knows. Why would I, after being in this business for 5 or 6 years, second guess him? It's 30 IPS, which is what the half-inch was, but quarter-inch. And if he said it was the way to go, and I now have to agree with him. Yeah, this is what a lot of the major works that were done in the 50s were done this way. If you wanted to go back, I'm more agreeable than anything. I still used, when I did the vocals and went back in, I went and used Frank Sinatra's microphone again at Capitol in Studios A and B. They like me there. I pay my bills. It's good. And I get as big of a studio, and I'm about by myself when we go there. Why do I spend the money to go to these major studios and give you the quality that I'm generating for you? It's because my name's on it. One of the things that, and I'm accountable, me. I don't have somebody else paying the bill for me and me just sitting back and creating music or doing something else. It's me. And if something's wrong with the album or anything else, I'm the one accountable. No, nobody else. I can't put that responsibility on someone else, so I'm the one. And if you don't like something about the album, you can blame me, nobody else. Everybody did their best at coming up with great strategies for us in terms of the engineering team as well as the arrangements. I came up with this crazy idea originally on this album to do a tribute to one of my favorite musicians by the name of Stanley Turrentine. Stanley Turrentine is a saxophone player who has passed away. I think he was from New Jersey. I'm not positive. No, Philadelphia. He was from Philadelphia. And I loved his work. And I sang. I learned to sing with him. I didn't learn to sing with a singer. So I wanted to do something. And one of the albums I love most is one called Ballads. And on that is Willow Weep for Me. He has Watch Over Me, Someone to Watch Over Me, Willow Weep for Me, and Watch What Happens. He's got even that one on it. So I chose to, and Since I Fell for You. So I picked some of the songs, and I had my arrangers take them and make an interpretation of what Stanley would possibly do today playing with the pianists that I use. When I have an arrangement designed, they're not cheap. And so I have in mind who I want to play on it. It's like I come up with a stage, and on that song, these are the players that work best with that particular song. So I wouldn't give, for instance, to Mir Hendelman, who works for Barbra Streisand, I wouldn't have given him the song you heard, Crazy, because Mike does a boogie-woogie like nobody else. And I wanted to have that interpretation built into it. When I come to the stage of deciding what I was going to do with the actual album, I make that decision up front. So here is my friend Scott, who came up with an idea and said, Lyn, do a one-step. Oh my God, if I had known now what I don't know if I'd do it again. But anyway, that's how it all worked out. So the one-step process is basically where you take the father, as Bernie said, the actual lacquer, and here is. So this is one of the lacquers. It could have been the one that was shown on the screen. This is it. And this is actually what Kevin has a set in the VAC room, and he played it for me, the whole album. I'm telling you, what a thrill. If you get a chance, Kevin will play the album again at some point. I'm sure he'll come up with some times for you, but to hear this as an audiophile is incredible. But what happens is this. We took this and it was taken over to, I literally, when Bernie finished making this lacquer, the two sets, I had a gentleman waiting on the first set with a car waiting and drove it straight over to the plant. I took control of that. Straight over to the plant within 1 hour, that was in that bath, that preservative bath. I run them straight because they deteriorate. The minute Bernie's done with them, they start to die down. So the quicker you can get them to the plant to be preserved, the better the music is to what it was when Bernie was making it originally. That is one of the tricks of making sure that your quality of your product is going to be the best possible. Little steps like that. When they actually come up with a stamper that's created, it looks like this. It's also metal. It is made, it's made from it becomes like a cocoon. When it looks like this, when he brings it out, it comes out, after it's been in that bath that you saw it in, it looks like this, and they actually separate the two pieces here, and the cocoon comes off, and it leaves you with, from the positive lacquer to a negative, and the negative can make records. But once it goes through the process of being used over and over again, it will die. So to understand what happens with most records are done with 3 steps. So what they do is they take the father and they create a mother from it, and then they create baby stampers. And your albums are usually 3 steps. Yeah, what do you? What they try to do, it's not that many. You can get up to, it depends on the quality. We're going to find out from my father for the first time. I'm going to know the answer to that, and I don't know it right now. But they predict that somewhere between 500 and 1,000, never more than 1,000. I know that Bernie did 67 lacquers for the album Thriller. 67 lacquers to create third process. That's for how many millions? Have you got an idea? How many million albums did it sell? It's 67 million. I don't know what it was. It was some number big. But that's what you have to do to make those. But to understand the process. Now, when you go to record, I also, so you know, in my Potions album, I did it entirely analog. But I did do a trick on that album, and it was not appreciated by one of the Asian market people. One of the things that happened when we went to New York, and Michael Fremer was there, it was a snowy day, and Al was in town, so we recorded at Avatar. And I had Kenny Werner working on that album. When we were in the middle of it, we ran out of tape. How do you run out of tape? I'm doing an analog album. How do you run out of tape? It happened. I always have them as a backup, because of expenses, to always do a Pro Tool backup. So what I had to do is come creative and think of what I could do to still market it. And so I came up with the idea of giving the audiophiles the challenge of figuring out which song on the album was a Pro Tools song. And we fed it into the mix. It was still analog mixed. But I learned a trick from that. I learned that I could possibly, if I have mistakes, I can do that kind of thing and make it happen and not lose so much money. The key tribute to what you do as a producer is save money. You've got the less money you spend, the more you can market. I mean, that's what they try to tell you. So in the case of this album, I'm going to take you one step further. In the development of the arrangements on this one, I came up with an idea of using classical music and putting it together with jazz standards. So I have, for instance, Chopin, Prelude in E minor, in a long version with Christian Jacob playing. It's going to be on the second volume. Long version with all Chopin. And Christian was a trained classical pianist from Paris. He was at the age of 4, he was winning awards in France. So he plays, and then I come in with How Insensitive. It's amazing. I did a shorter version of it so we could play it on radio. So that's why it's on volume 1, and it's the one you heard this morning. Yeah, it's a shorter version, but you can't get people to play your records on radio if they're longer than 4 minutes, usually 4.5. So that song is one of them. But I also took, for instance, Rhapsody in Blue to open up with All or Nothing at All. Now, how did I come up? These are my concepts. How did I do that? I told the arranger, think of The Apartment with Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine, and come up with an idea of eliminate that music and bring it forward to a new time zone, eliminate music, and she's sitting there singing All or Nothing at All to either my three, what was that, Fred McMurray or whomever she wanted. But you have to give illusions to the musicians as they're creating your arrangements. But now I'm going to ask Andreas to describe what he got from, and Andreas was the one who introduced me to Michael Bishop, who was the mixing engineer. Now, Michael has a different modus operandi as a mixing engineer than Al does. They have different styles. What happened when we first began mixing, Michael had, if you're a mixing engineer, you're like a conductor. They have all of these different lines of communication. It's the guitar track or it's the bass track or whatever. He's actually conducting it and making it happen. It's an art form to be a wonderful mixing engineer. It's truly an art form. When you get to the mastering level, it's like polishing, a major polishing job on what has happened before. The art comes from what we did, translated to the interpretation by the mixing engineer, and then off to the mastering on these major recordings. So Andreas has been working with me and on the development of the DSD and the digital version of this, taking the 1/4-inch tape that we did, translating it into a digital format, and helping me come up with, give me a little talk about. So he's been playing it in room 402 upstairs. Just wanted to give you a preview of that. So it's Kevin in, what room are you in? Dearborn. Kevin in Dearborn. Okay, so you want to, I'll maybe take one of those. Oh, yes, please. Are they working? Can you put up the second mic? I don't think they're still, they may not be there. Yep. Okay, so yeah, I'll ask the question. So why don't you tell him what happened with when you got the actual the CDs and what your system, your new Dream system, is doing for it?
Yeah, the CD is just 16-bit 44.1, and it's a reference CD. That's kind of the master or the proof in a printing terms. It's the proof of what is going to be expected when you press the CDs. So that's what we're playing actually upstairs in the room, and my technology takes that 16-bit 44.1 and upsamples or converts it to DSD before it gets converted to analog. And with that, we're able to bring some of that flavor that you have on the analog or in the recording process in various steps. It brings it back a little bit, and you can experience somewhat the experience from the studio this way.
Yeah. So what you find out is that when you deal with the analog, you can do if you record in analog, mix and master in analog, all options are open, right? The door is open. And just so you know, when you are mixing an album and mastering, Bernie will never take a digital album and master it in analog. Do you all get that? Everybody get that? It's a very important point. You must know that if an album is recorded, if you ask anyone, was that recorded digital on Pro Tools? It's going to be mixed and mastered in Pro Tools. So if you go to be here's Lyn's personal opinion. If you go to buy, for instance, a reel-to-reel, and it was a digital album, why are you paying $250 or more for an album when you can just go buy the vinyl and transfer it into a tape? It's my opinion, okay? I'm really a stickler on having one source equal the other. So my vinyl, my reel-to-reel, for instance, I only will do it on my analog recordings. My first album was a digital Pro Tools, and I will not ever make that into an analog. But you have, because it's an analog, you've got all kinds of options, right? When we actually get the DSDs, what are you going to do with them? When we actually get the SACD or the double DSDs, will your converter go even further? What will it do?
Yeah, if it's an SACD, we convert that to double DSD, because that's kind of a sweet spot in the DSD domain. And if you go further from SACD rate, the single DSD, and you go up to double DSD, you hit a sweet spot, and the conversion from there to analog is really trivial, very simple. If you go further, then you're starting to see some side effects, and you need to take care of those before you convert to analog. So we're taking the DSD layer to double DSD, and then the conversion is just a very, very simple process, and no distortion. Not much happens there.
So if you know Scott Hull at all, you'll know that he gave me I got a new sticker. I'm going to go home and tell my mom I got a new sticker, because he gave me an 11 out of 10 for my Interludes album. And the reason for that in reel-to-reel is because we took extra care to do yet a proprietary technique that I'm not disclosing to you, but I've upped the ante, and I went and talked to Al and Bernie in a pre-production meeting, making sure that we had all the things we needed before we started recording, so that would end up being the most masterful piece I had come up to date with. Now that Bernie would use the same technique on this new album, but we went down to 30 IPS, 2-track, and 50 and a quarter inch. So we're taking yet another step and see what happens with our Audiophile's interpretation of it. And I think Kevin will tell you that the one step is probably going to be very, very good. Yes, yeah, Kevin, we were overwhelmed with it in that room. So I can take a few questions. I've got like 5 or so minutes. If you want to ask some, I'm happy to. Yeah. There's one for each side, exactly. And Bernie actually scratches it. Ooh, you should see him. And if you ever look at, I don't know if you've ever taken the time to actually look at a vinyl record, Bernie writes his name on it. Did you know that? He puts a number. If you really look close at my albums, you really look under light, you'll see Bernie's signature. His signature is on them. And each one of my albums has a number. Do you do that too on your signature at all? You probably don't. Yeah. No. Oh, you do? Oh, tell them. Oh, really?
Well, yeah, I used to have a signature series on the old SACD player, and we numbered it and signed it also, just like a record.
See? So that's their. Like hotcakes. Yeah. But the point is that they have a proprietary technique, and they have their name on it, right? Your name's on it, so it's all there. So when I went to Bernie and said, I'm doing reel-to-reels, will you sign the lacquer the flange itself? Bernie said, sure. So now and what happens when my reel-to-reels are more expensive, and I'm going to come up with another line, and I'll tell you why they're expensive. Bernie, in my case, on my reel-to-reels, goes right from his master of it and runs it, which means a depletion of that master, I'm sure, over time. But he uses the master. Now, I have had what they call a production master done. Does anyone know what that is? A production master. That's a copy of it that's at half-inch, and this is what I did on Potion, half-inch and 30 IPS tape. And what I did is I gave that to Jonathan Horwich and asked him to make an IEC version of it so I could compare it with what Bernie had done on the actual from the master. And Scott actually did an analysis of it and came up with a conclusion. He wouldn't publish what he found out, but he did come up with a conclusion on it. Because Jonathan is just fastidious on things that he does. He's very much meticulous. But because it wasn't coming directly from the master, it was a different sound. And there you go on that. Very interesting. So do you have any questions on yeah, go ahead. Yes, as they come off the line, I pay extra to get that done. One of the things I have done in the past with all the albums is as they're coming off the vinyl, typically like Impex is one of the standards, they change the stamper from they change the stamper every 500 albums, every 500 discs, right? I paid extra, $1,200 to have mine changed at every 300. I was so worried that the quality wouldn't be there when I had run those things over to RTI in the middle of the night. Now, no kidding, how coincidental that when I had to run Moonlight sessions over to RTI to get them preserved, guess what time it was? Yes, midnight. Yeah, it was late, really late. Bernie and I stayed together till about 8:30, and by the time I got to Camarillo, which was an hour and a half away, and they put him in the bath by the time I got those stampers done. Now, what's really interesting is that one step has only, he only had to put it in the bath for approximately 40 minutes. Whereas when you do a 3-step, it's in for over 24 hours. Very interesting strategy on that. But yeah, does that answer that question? Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, well, what we did on the second version of the album, where I'm including the strings, if I can pull it up, I'll try to play it for you. I have included Over the Rainbow. Andreas has heard it. It's using Debussy, Clair de Lune. And Christian Jacob came up with the arrangement. And when we went to the Budapest people, after I'll tell you how that was done. We streamed them, as I mentioned while I was showing it. We were on Skype and an audio as well, and we streamed it in. And I was talking to them, and Christian's got such an incredible ear. You saw how all those musicians were. Now, Christian's sitting next to me here in California, and they're in Budapest, Hungary. And Christian says, you know that cello player over there, fourth one on the right? He made a D instead of an F on that note. Yeah.
I just wanted to add one thing.
Yeah.
I told you at the time when you explained the Lacquer in our room. So a lot of times I've heard that metal hair recorded.
Yeah, we'll get you there so you can speak on
Oh, no. I just wanted to say, when Lyn first brought the Lacquers to our room and played them, what immediately struck me, and I said to her, was it's a long time since I've heard that level of care in the recording and the mastering of an album. It in many ways is reminiscent of the very best that you would have heard in the 1950s and early 1960s. A bit different by virtue of the different recording techniques today, but the same level of just really creative, well-integrated professionalism and just such wonderful, wonderful sound quality and a wonderful degree of care they've taken. But more importantly, we've all heard audiophile recordings which have great sound quality, but we really don't play them very often because they're just audiophile recordings. In the case of Lyn's new album, her artistry, every outing, becomes more playful, more sophisticated, more beautifully voiced and articulated. And this album truly is worthy of listening to, even if it weren't an audiophile album. And I was particularly surprised by two things in the recording. We talked about the classical integration. It's wonderful. But I was surprised to hear you do Moonlight Serenade, a song written by Glenn Miller back in the 1930s. Not many people, I don't think, realize that song has lyrics. And she sang it. And I was within that far of bawling. It was just a beautiful, emotional performance. And you also were the only person I've ever heard perform Crazy. It didn't sound like a Patsy Cline club. Where you thought of Stop Time and Boogie Woogie, that I have no idea, but it was beautiful. So I strongly recommend what she's done, both as an audiophile and as someone who really loves good American standards and jazz.
Thank you very much. That's quite a tribute from Kevin. What I found, when I'm going around from room to room, one of the things I notice, and again, you just have to imagine that I'm an artist and I spend so much time in the studios with the engineers. I have an engineering point of view. You have an audiophile hearing. You see things differently than I do, I'm sure. But when I go around to a room and I have my recordings, which are done at the highest level that I can afford, and that my engineers believe is as good as what they do for Dylan or Streisand or anyone else. They truly believe that I walk into a room and someone will put on my vinyl and have it come back. They'll get up from their chairs, the room organizers, and be tweaking. And that drives me crazy because the album is, it's playable. You can play. And one of the things I said to Bernie on this last session, I said, why, when I go to audiophile shows like CES, were they playing Bobby McFarlane? Boom, 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 boom. How does that test a system, Bernie? Shouldn't you be playing things that really go bananas in the system? It's got highs, it's got lows. If you really want to hear how your system, if you were to buy that system, how it would work in your home, give it a run for its money and let it go. And if you go into a room, again, my opinion, blame me, talk about me, say I'm an idiot, whatever. I mean, I've even heard I'm a transsexual. That's come out of this song. I mean, seriously. Say what you want. But I'm still telling you that if you go into a room and they have it pre-recorded, and you're coming in with a really good recording. I'm not talking about somebody with one they made up themselves. A really good recording, and they refuse to play it on that system when you've asked, and there's room, and they could, like there's no one in the room. Be very wary. That's all I can tell you. I'm always skeptical of those kinds of things. But in Kevin's room, for instance, when we put that lacquer, that amazing metal lacquer on his system, he sat back and just enjoyed. He didn't touch one thing. And I'm overwhelmed when I hear and see that in a room. And the other thing, too, I have heard from Bernie, and I do believe this true. You can correct me, too. You might not agree with me. But if you have a system where the people are playing just MP3s, MP3s are crushed and they're controlled, right, as opposed to crazy verbose. They're like jumping all around. And Andreas will tell you that IEC versus NAB, and there's a philosophy about those two different ways of what happens when you use one technique or the other. But if you use an MP3 to demo a big system, that's not the test to my book. So you want to have as much as you can in terms of robustness. So anything else? I'm going to play a little while I'm going to play some more. Sure. I usually will tell people, musicians, I believe I have an unusual voice. Christian Jacob in my liner notes wrote to Kirk Silsby, her voice is rare. You can hear me. You walk down a hall, you know it's me. One of the key signatures of every really strong artist you've ever known is that you know and recognize them right off the bat. They don't sound like everybody else. So if I was told by Paul Smith's wife early on, you have a unique sound, you have a unique look, everything, keep your own style, don't learn from other singers, learn your own way. And what happened is I listened to, as a child, Frank Sinatra a lot because my mother played them a lot. And when I also listened to Judy Garland. So good. It's time. Thank you. Well, they've told me that we're closing books. So I thank you so much for spending time with me. I really hope you enjoy the next album. Thank you.